Hey there, YouTubers. Thanks for tuning back into another video. Today, we're going to dive right back into the SI Civic build and do a little bit of recap, do a little bit of new stuff, and hopefully make some progress. So let's go ahead and roll this intro and get the party started. Several days, going on a week now since we've uploaded and really caught you guys up and produced another episode. So this will be episode 4. With that, there's been quite a bit of completion up to this point. So what I'm planning on doing is, since I didn't record in-depth stuff as I was working on the different projects, I wanted to go ahead and kind of put it together for you in like a bit of a montage, overlay it with some music, so that way you can see all of the little things that I've been working on. In addition to that, whenever we got a lot of the, actually when we left off in the last video, I was still looking for cams. So we've got cams. We've actually made a lot of headway. So without any further ado, let's play this montage and then we'll pick you right back up and talk about present day. No bueno, we need longer line, and then we got to redo this with one of them no tap nonsense things or something, because it's like a barb fitting. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is where we are present day. I've got the head bolted down to the block using the ARP hardware that you saw. We've used the Zerg Industries LS Vtec kit. We've also got our AN vented valve cover, I guess you could call it. We've got our Honda Rules coil-on plug plate, our coils from Burton Racing, along with the other Burton Racing coil-on plug kit. We went ahead with our GSR cams and picked up a set of factory Honda bolts. We've got Honda seals, and we've even got Honda dowels or keyways inside here. So that set us back a little bit in the timing. In addition to that, we've also got a Cometic head gasket that came with the Zerg kit. And I ordered a Downstar bolt kit, if you remember in the last video. So the way that it came, it didn't include any studs. So the kit that I ordered, let's walk over here and take a look, is more of a engine kit for your map sensor, your throttle cable, your little hardware. It's not really a stud kit. It does, however, have the nuts down here. So these are the last two. It's pretty neat. So the way that they do it, you've got number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and so on and so forth. So it kind of sequences it out so that way you can figure out what's what. So intake manifold, flange nuts, intake manifold, flange nuts, exhaust manifold nuts, and then 3 fuel rail flange nuts. So the way that it's set up, 3 fuel, tongue-tied here, 3 fuel rail flange nuts. Then we have our exhaust manifold nuts. Then we have our intake manifold nuts. And then these are for our valve cover. So ultimately, it's pretty straightforward, but it didn't include what we thought it was, so we had to get a little handy. So in the tail end of the montage, you caught me tapping a stud here on the exhaust side of the head. The reason that I did that was someone had boogered up and pulled some of the threading out, and there's still plenty of meat inside the head, but I needed to just run a tap down it to make sure that everything was clean so I didn't booger anything up. So we've got everything situated now, and as you saw whenever I was looking at the motor here, it's leaking a little oil. So the reason it's been leaking a little oil is because I didn't order a cam seal. And let me flip the camera. So the cam seal that normally goes in this guy right here actually showed up this morning. So this morning's Sunday, and I didn't have this, so we had a little bit of a spillage. But if you're in the need for one of these and you can't really wait, in most areas, Amazon Prime sells this little guy. And the way it's made, it works. It's nothing fancy, but they claim it's billet. It's got 3 O-rings on it. I don't know if you guys can see there. I don't want to pull it out of the package just yet. I misplace stuff whenever I have a whole bunch of items laying around, so I try to leave stuff in boxes. But this year, billet, triple O-ring, BD, H, F series engines, they're like $8 on Amazon. You can get them in a couple days, and in my opinion, they work better and they're more cost effective than the ones you can get at O'Reilly's or AutoZone. So we're going to throw that in there. The downfall with the VTEC engine is the entire rocker arm assembly, the little cam caps that cover the rocker arm assembly. That's got to come off in order to be able to get this one cap off. So I've done that a few times now because I didn't put the dowel or the O-ring back in, so I had to pull that back out and do that again. But guys, we're looking pretty fresh here. So with all of the work, all of the wrinkling, all of the wire wheeling, all of the paint, all of the prep, we're getting really, really close. Our Downstar kit did come with throttle body hardware. So we got that throttle body installed. This is a Skunk 2 70 mil on this Victor X, excuse me. So we pulled all the fittings out of it, taped stuff off, went ahead and sprayed it with wrinkle, as you saw in the montage. Overall, guys, it's really, really, really clean. We've got, a little valve cover hardware kit. As you can see, we're missing the stud here. I also don't have the grommets that go inside of some of this stuff. I've misplaced it whenever the head went into storage. But we've got that coming, so if it doesn't ship tomorrow, I'm going to order a duplicate off Amazon because, again, it's Prime and it'll be here soon. The other one, I think, is claiming a potential delivery date of September 14th. And, I mean, that's almost 2 weeks away, so that's kind of ridiculous. But there it is, guys. B20B with a P72 GSR head. It's rocking a set of stock cams. It's going to be rocking Burton's coil-on plug. It's going to have a healthy little snail. If you follow me on social media, you kind of got a teaser yesterday of this. And we did a FabMD top mount with a Garrett 30R. It's actually still sitting over here. A little bit of bad news. It's not really bad news, but just, a fork in the road. This actually belongs to a different build. And that build actually may be sold. So if that is the case, then we're going to pick up some different stuff. Probably going to go with some items that I can order online and get in a a decent time frame. The manifold, if we could use it, we would love to, but in this case, like I said, it might already be pre-sold. So with all this stuff here while I'm talking, you've probably realized that there's a transmission part or piece of it laying on the floor along with the B20 head here. We're going to talk about that in a minute and kind of let you know what the plans are for the transmission going inside this car. Back in episode 2, I mentioned that we were getting the GSR transmission. Well, again, another fork in the road. We've decided to save that for a different build. So after this build, we'll have a GSR turbo setup coming out in some form of chassis. It's going to be saved for that. It's already got an in-factory diff, as I mentioned. So what we elected to do was to find a stock transmission, and I already had a phantom grip. The reason that we wanted a stock transmission was primarily for cost, but 2, we wanted something that was as healthy as we could get, because as you remember in one of the last videos, our previous transmission was pretty well, let's just say it was messed up. So because it was messed up the way it was, it might not be cost effective to repair it. So what happens a lot of times whenever you get into this genre or this year, make and model of these transmissions for B series cars, what happens is over time, no one really opens them up until they're broken. And a lot of times it costs so much to fix them when they are broken, they just kind of get left and nothing gets done. So by the time you purchase one, if it's not already good, it may need a couple synchros, it may need a hub, it may need a slider, it might need a gear, you never know. So as these things are easy to find used, if you have a plug or a source, they're not as inexpensive in all cases whenever you're buying new. So for the budget-oriented piece of this build, we wanted to try to find something that was as healthy as possible. And we lucked up. So we've got a LS transmission. It is completely stock. It belonged to a friend of ours, so we know it's healthy. I'm going to go ahead. I've already oven cleaned it, as you saw in a picture. It's not exactly the way I want to bolt it in the car yet. So I've got to pull it apart. I've got to put the good diff in it, because the diff in it we're not going to use. It's a welded diff. And we're going to put the phantom grip inside this diff. This is the first time that I've ever tackled it, so I may do a video on it, I may not, but the end result will be a definite learning experience. So with that being the case, once the transmission is assembled back together with the new diff, I'm going to paint it, and we'll get it all freshened up. We're still waiting on the wheels. I kind of went a little bit too far on the wheels, and what I mean by that is, as you saw in the previous video, they were black. They weren't really scuffed. They weren't really scraped up. But for some reason, I felt the need to go ahead and strip the paint. And I can't get the paint off. And apparently from the research and people I've talked to within the last year, the EPA has removed a chemical from aircraft stripper, paint stripper, that used to work and make it work very well. In current day, the chemical is no longer in part of it, and it doesn't really work worth a flip. So with that being the case, I've resulted to trying to media blast it. I've resulted to sanding it, and eventually we're going to get it to the point where I can paint them. But until then, he's still sitting. So once he's out of the garage, we'll have transmission, we'll have an engine, we'll have all of our ducks in a row. Hopefully by that point we'll have a complete turbo kit that we can use. And then we'll have the opportunity to but clean and freshen up this bay, because it's pretty nasty. There's a lot of axle grease that's kind of flung around because the axle was pulled in pieces whenever I pulled it out. So we've got a little bit of cleaning up to do. We've got a little bit of massaging, but mainly we're really making progress. So within the next few weeks, we hope to have this thing running and driving under its own power, and then off to the dyno we go. So if you remember with the white Civic, the white 98 EK Coupe, there was a B18 turbo. Once they go to the dyno, they're pretty well ready for sale. So if this is something that interests you, get in contact with me, please. Let's go ahead and start off the process. And you know, I won't hide a thing. I don't care to tell you exactly what I know. The whole bottom line to these is that I build these cars as reliably, as affordably, and the way that I would recommend, along with a lot of the guys that help me out, you know, Raw Performance, Infamous. I've learned a lot from them, and I continue to learn a lot. So I'm not going to steer anybody in the wrong direction. But if you get in on this and you decide you want the car, there may be some stuff down the road towards the end that, you know, you want to see or you want to change. And, you know, we can talk about that. But the car is going to be ready soon. So without much other delay, let's go ahead, dive into putting this cam seal in. Let's get it knocked down. Let's put that motor all to the side. Let's change out some hardware. Let's rock and roll. So let's get this party started. All right, YouTubers. So the first thing we got to do is disassemble all this stuff. So I'm going to try to keep the coils in the Honda rules. Coil unplug hardware piece, the mounting plate. So I'm going to find a spot here that I can set this stuff. And we're just going to keep pulling the valve cover apart. So once I get it to where you can see, I'll turn the camera around here and we'll be right back. All right, so I'm going to show you here what we're working with. So normally you would, and like if you were doing this yourself for your own engine, you'd have a distributor and you'd probably have this in the car. But after you've got the valve cover, the spark plugs, your spark plug cover, tube, center, all this stuff apart to where you can now see what I see, you're going to want to go ahead and you're going to want to pull these. So the way that this is, it's very light torque. I usually start in the center, then I work right, then I work left, then I work right, then I work left, then I work right. You kind of get the idea. So we're going to go ahead and pull this one up real quick, and we'll be right back. Switching sockets. And then the last ones here are 10 millimeters. All right, so we can now remove this. So with very little effort, you just lift up on it. You carry it over here to where it's going to be able to hang out. And now we're left with this cam cap. So this cam cap here, a lot of times you can peck on it if they're already seated and on the little dowels. So let's go ahead, grab ourselves a little pecker, and let's just give it a little tap. See if we can get it to, there we go. That's all she needed. So with that being the case, she'll just lift up. Your bolt's got to be unthreaded. And you can literally just see where the cam seal goes. So let me grab the cam seal out of the box and we'll get right back to it. All right, so the cam seal that I showed you earlier is now out of the package. The way it actually sits is like this. The hollow end goes towards the camshaft. So you want to make sure that all this is really dry, clean. There's no debris in it. So let's go ahead and wipe it out, and then we'll put that little guy in there. So I got a little rag. See if we can get all this oil out of there. And then in she goes, just like this. Literally just sits there. From that point, you take your cam cap and you can align it with your bolt holes. If you align it with these screw holes to where they'll thread in, then it automatically puts the inside lip of this where it needs to go in the cam cap. So not much room for error there. So you can get this little guy down. And then in the retorque order, we're going to go the same way. So once we get that piece on top, then we're just going to go ahead and tighten them. So if you remember, I ended off on the 10mm bolts. We're going to come back to this side and end off on these 10mm bolts this time around. So we'll just go right back through the sequence and we'll be done. Get ready to assemble it. And I believe I have a valve cover gasket somewhere. So we'll go find that, throw it in, and we'll be ready to rock and roll. I get them all started by hand, and then I just run them down with a little 1/4 inch impactor drill. I don't really tighten them, I just run them down snug. So we'll get them all started, make sure they're in there, and then I finish them by hand with a ratchet. So let's go ahead and get the 12mm. So you start in the center. The goal is just right before a ooga tooga, a click. None of that. I've broke these before in an LS, if you remember that video. It's not the funnest thing to try to remove. So you want to be real simple. So now we're left with the 10mm. Real gentle, not simple. So let's go ahead and swap back to our 10mm here. This is all the cams, head bolts, and then the little rockers off of the B20. So now we've got this guy over here. And that'll do it. So let's run them down by hand with a ratchet, and then let's go ahead and hunt that valve cover gasket. You guys can see I'm not using the end of the handle because I don't want any extra torque. I literally just want them good and snug. So let's go back through, check them. And let's get that 10mm and do the same thing to those. Got to be easier on the 10s. All right, guys. So we're ready for a valve cover gasket, and we'll be ready to rock and roll here real soon. So before I really get too far and put it together for the final assembly, we do need to adjust the valves. So you adjust the valves by the orientation and the distance between the cam lobes and the rockers, the little feeler pads there. So we'll do that offline, and we'll be ready to rock. So let's go ahead and hunt us a valve cover gasket and get right back to it. All right, guys, so I noticed that I hadn't done anything with the Vtec solenoid yet. So the way that this one was set up, I pulled it off the head, and the gasket, I wanted to go ahead and replace it. So I ordered both of the Honda models here. So these things came in the mail. So we're going to go ahead and pull this thing out onto the bench, degrease it, clean it up a little bit, put these guys in it, and then we'll be able to put it and the valve cover back on with the valve cover gasket. A little bit of oven cleaner never hurt nobody. So let me get a pick, we'll pull this out, and then be ready to rock and roll. Also, I need these out. All right, grab a pick. All right, I couldn't find a pick, so a flathead will have to do. I mean, we barely just need to get in here, so let me go ahead. It's got some sealant on it here. It'd be hard to do this on camera, so let me go ahead and pick it off, and then we'll be right back. All right, so the gasket's out, and the screen, you can see, had tons of garbage in it. So with that, in addition to all of the extra gasket material that they used, it didn't want to come out. So let's go ahead and pull this bracket off as well, and then we'll be ready to throw some oven cleaner on it and shine her up. I'm gonna let that eat on it a little bit. We'll be right back. Scrub-a-dub-dub. Just a little like plastic bristle brush. Just knocking some of the heavy stuff off. Then we'll take a wire wheel to this gasket material. Just make sure it's all gone, because odds are that gasket material was to help delete from a bad gasket. They're not typically needed. This oven cleaner has a high acidic content, so it works really good for dirt and grime and nonsense. So we're about there, guys. Use this little end of the brush, get in there. Air conditioner kicked on, so I'm gonna pick you guys back up in a second. All right, boys and girls, so you got this little gasket here. You gotta lift him out, just like so. And then I use this to just pull a little bit of the oil out. All right, so there's our bad gasket. This is our new one going in. Well, technically he wasn't bad, but you know, we're gonna change one, we're gonna change them both. Get this little guy down in there, press him firm, just like that. He's in there. And then you just go back to reassembling. Kind of like this. Put your bolts in. Get this one in. And you get this one in. And then you tighten them all down. They don't have to be super tight. It's got that little O-ring gasket in there, so he's not going anywhere. All right, so we're done with that one. Now we got to go for the big guy. Let's pull the big guy out. All right, so it only goes in one way, and there's a V and there's a V. So you can kind of put it in like this and then just walk it around like so. So we're basically ready to go ahead and put him back on the car. We've got some bolts here I'm going to clean up, and then we'll meet you back over there at the car. So boys and girls, that's the finished product. We've got a new gasket. We have actually 2 new gaskets in our Vtec solenoid. So let's go see if we can't hunt a valve cover gasket, put it back together, and we'll wrap this video up. So boys and girls, there it is, the Vtec solenoid, the cam seal. I actually found some of the grommets that I needed. We're still missing a stud that's broken in here in the back. So we're still going to wait on that dress up valve cover grommet kit, and we'll be in business. So if you've liked this video, hit the like button. It really helps me out a lot. Consider subscribing to the channel for future content, and turn on that bell so you know whenever I upload. Follow me on social media, Seth Church Vid on Instagram and Facebook. And guys, we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.